Being on the liver transplant list is never by choice. Today, over 9,000 Americans are waiting on a life-changing liver transplant. It just goes to show you that each passing moment is hope for someone else to get a life-changing organ. Today, I'm going to break down how I got onto the list and how it feels to get off of the liver transplant list. Let's get into it. Getting on the transplant list is the doctor's call only, period. It was not a decision that I could make. It is all based on your MELD score. If your MELD score isn't bad enough, you're not on the list. Mine was so bad that they had an emergency meeting to expedite me on the list because my liver was failing so quickly. They test for everything. They tested my heart, they tested my lungs, they test for HIV, they test for drugs, they test for cancer. They even look at your teeth to make sure there's no infection or any type of bacteria in it. And getting on the list saved my life, but getting off the list was even harder. Let me set the scene for how sick I was. I was jaundiced, I had brain fog, I had swollen legs, I had no appetite. I began to get sepsis. I had pneumonia multiple times. Fluid was going through my liver into my lungs, all around my body, and it was poisoning me. It was getting infected. I didn't realize how bad it was until doctors explained what was going on with me. My liver was shutting down. It wanted no nutrients, no water, no liquids, and my body was failing. A MELD score shows how bad your liver function is. My MELD score made it up to a 23. They measure your blood and it anticipates how poor your liver is functioning. I was already scared. My body was failing. I was sitting in bed every day, depressed, and I couldn't eat anything. I wanted nutrients. I wanted water. My body wanted nothing. I was already scared before all the testing and everything we had to do to get on the list. But it's a really big process, and it takes a lot just to be qualified to get on the list. In my journey, I felt a little bit embarrassed because you don't really celebrate getting on a transplant list, especially when you're that ill. It's basically saying, hey, I have to wait for somebody else to pass away so that I can continue living my life. I was a little scared being on the transplant list because I didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know when I was going to get the call. I didn't know what type of liver that I was going to get. I wasn't a high priority because my MELD score was only at a 23, but I had every symptom in the book, which meant that I did not have a priority liver coming to me. I was just suffering in bed and I just wanted it to be over with. So I was also a little bit excited just because this part of my life hopefully would have been over soon. The process for getting on the list at Loma Linda first is all determined by your MELD score. They check your INR, your bilirubin, your sodium, and your bleed stop time to make sure that your blood will stop bleeding. Only doctors decide if you can get on this transplant list. You can't ask to be on this list. I had a caseworker from Loma Linda help me out and get me on the list and go through all the steps necessary, and she was amazing. There were a lot of tests. There was a heart test, there's ultrasounds, and all of this costs a pretty penny. We had to prove and establish caretakers and their responsibilities. It takes an entire team to get through this. You need someone that will feed you your medication afterward, take care of you, help you up, help you to the restroom, because you have a foreign object in your body after you get this transplant. Caretakers were also responsible for being on call because they'll call me first and then call my other two caretakers. And if we don't answer, then the next person gets the liver. It's all timed because this organ is very precious and a lot of times they fly it in. Other caretaker responsibilities include feeding, helping to the restroom, getting up out of bed, exercise. There's between 10 and 15 medications that you have to be on after the transplant. Most of them are rejection medications. Of course, they did cancer screenings, and every single month they did blood tests while you're on the list to check to see if they find alcohol, drugs, or any foreign substances, because they will remove you from the list if you are not a proper candidate. Look, I've had CTs, MRIs, heart tests, ultrasounds, I've had endoscopies, I've had a lot of different tests, and I'm just going to reiterate, it costs a lot of money to go through this process. They even do a psychological evaluation where they ask you a lot of different questions to make sure that you're eligible and that your mind is good enough to get a transplant and to recover from it fully. Nobody talks about the dental clearance that is required to get on the transplant list. They have to clear your mouth for bacteria and infection, meaning you have to have all your teeth up to date. They also require you to meet the surgeon before the transplant, and he has to approve it. He observed me physically and made sure that he was able to put a liver in me. And then he showed me the scar that I was going to have on my stomach in the shape of a peace sign or a Mercedes symbol. There also is a little bit of emotional shock because they check that every part of your body is working. And I've never had that done before. And it's kind of a weird feeling, but it feels good in the end because you know everything that they find. And this liver transplant was the thing that was going to save my life. Then they called and said that I was on the list. And honestly, it felt good. It felt like I had an insurance that if I was going to get really bad, hopefully I could get a new organ. Some of the rules are you have to be within 30 minutes at all times, which means no heavy traveling, or you have to let them know and you might pass up on your transplant. One of the other rules is all your caretakers have to be ready at all times to drive you to the transplant from and to take care of you. This took an entire team of people. You can't travel, you can't be unreachable, you can't turn off your phone. You have to notify them if you're going out of the state or anything because somebody else also needs a liver transplant. Unfortunately, things go wrong. We had a friend of the family who went in for his transplant, got the call, and he passed away under the knife. Knowing that anything can happen also sort of scares you a little bit. But it's important to maintain a positive attitude during this. It's almost like I felt like my life was hanging on a phone call. As for life on the list, as I said earlier, they do monthly testing to make sure there's no alcohol, drugs, or anything bad in your system. Being on the list, it's important to be medically stable, to have no infections, no illnesses, no colds, no pneumonia. I had to see and keep in contact with my transplant team regularly at Loma Linda. It's a little bit stressful always being on call, knowing that any night you can get the call or any morning and just go get a transplant, get a surgery, and getting all these negative, depressed thoughts in my head that something could go wrong. Maybe I wouldn't get the call in time. Maybe I wouldn't make it through the surgery. Anything can happen, but this is one of the most important times to stay positive. We're on the transplant list, right? Every week, it felt like there was another thing on a list that I had to do just to remain on this transplant list. This is a big deal. I was pretty embarrassed to be on the transplant list. It's not really a moment that I feel I was proud of. The mental weight of just knowing that you can't get sick or an illness on top of being on the transplant list was pretty scary. I just laid in bed and prayed and hoped that nothing else would happen to me so I could get this liver transplant. Also, I thought a lot about how other people saw me, and I didn't want to see people looking at me as if I was dying. But at this point, I was so ill, I was just praying that it was all going to be over soon. The fear of the surgery failing was probably one of the biggest ones. Just getting to this point was a lot. And there was still a giant major surgery I was going to go through. More of the mental weight is just anxiety, trying to stay on the list. How long was I going to be on the list? My MELD score is at 23. This was a little bit lower than all the priority people on the list. Some people have 38 MELD scores, and that's the only way that you can get expedited. In a weird way, I almost had to get worse to get a liver faster, and that's the way my doctor put it. Some people have a lot of symptoms with a lower MELD score, and then some people have a very high MELD score and they don't have any symptoms. Knowing one day that I might still need a transplant will always sit in the back of my mind. But I'm going to remain positive during this, and I'm going to keep healing myself so that hopefully I don't have to go through that again. Now, my turnaround actions that got me off the transplant list, you can check them out in my other videos. I break them down, my diet, my exercise, and everything else that I do. But I'm going to quickly go over it now with you. I kept every appointment and I scheduled them as quickly as I could. I had a stack of paperwork that I made sure I was on top of every single day. I would call and leave messages when I couldn't get a hold of somebody, and then I would call again the next day. You have to be very vigilant with this and very persevering. I took every medication as directed. I was on 3 to 4 medications and lactulose, just cleaning myself out. I followed a good diet and nutrition plan. I did a low sodium diet. Remember, salt retains water and all the fluid buildup in the ascites. You want a low sodium diet. Loma Linda's physical therapy team rebuilt my strength. I did 2 stints with them. Therapies, music therapies, meditations, and physical therapies are all very important through any type of illness, especially liver failure. I had a lot of caretaker support, and I needed help cleaning, using the restroom, eating, getting food, and my family stepped up during this. And this is where my mindset shift happened. I decided to stop waiting on the list for a phone call and decided to start fighting to get as strong as I could to get off this transplant list. And it worked. One day they called me and said, "You don't need a transplant anymore. We're going to take you off the transplant list." The doctors made this decision because my MELD score had rapidly improved within the 6 months. It was a big relief getting off the transplant list, knowing that I didn't need one, but it was also a strange feeling because I already had it in my head that I was going to get a transplant, and now I almost felt like I didn't have a backup. But I was getting better and I was feeling good. All my eating, my exercise, it was flushing the toxins out. My bilirubin was improving. My bleed stop time was improving. All my blood statistics were getting better, which was a very good feeling for me because I worked really hard on all of this. But luckily, I could stop doing all their testing and relax and get some rest. I started gaining weight again and started feeling strong again. I went all the way from 145 up to a healthy 190 pounds. Look, here's what I learned about the whole experience. It's not just about waiting. It's about working to stay eligible for the liver transplant. Your MELD score runs the show. You can't cheat it. You can't ask to be on the list. Doctors decide when you get on the list, and doctors decide when you get off the list. I could now live without the constant fear that my liver was going to fail unless I got a transplant. Look, after everything I did, the healthy eating, the low sodium diet, the exercise, the drinking the water to flush my liver, the milk thistle at night, everything I did got my liver healing and got me healthy again. So always love your liver and take care of your body. Your liver is the one organ that can heal itself. I took this into my own hands and I healed myself off of the liver transplant list. And if I can do it, you can do it. Being on the transplant list saved my life, but getting off of it meant that I had fought back. And if any of you are on the transplant list, give them hell. Eat protein, exercise, drink water, take it into your own hands and fight for it. Because I got off the transplant list and I'm pretty sure you guys can do it too. Catch my next video on what I ate. I go through step by step the proteins and the low sodium diet on what I ate to get off the transplant list. Peace.